So I can appreciate opening credits just as much as anyone else, but only if it's done right and gives me some story during it. This one actually does that. This is 2020's Underwater. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinion on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. It turns out that this story takes place in the Mariana Trench, where some drilling is taking place 7 miles deep in the water. There are reports of strange creatures being sighted at the site though, and unexplained anomalies keep happening. They believe that a new deep-sea species has been discovered, and they still continue to operate out of this underwater base. Once we see inside the base, we notice that tremors keep throwing the power on and off, and the rumbling starts to grow louder. Soon we meet Nora, who is trying to go about her normal morning routine while dealing with the power cuts. While she's brushing her teeth, she contemplates the idea of being in this underwater base with no sense of time or direction, and she comes across a daddy long-legged spider in the sink. I already need some answers. They are miles deep in the middle of the ocean. The only way this thing could have made it down there with them is if they brought it on purpose, or if the equipment they brought it in had been sitting and collecting them. Either way, why would you bring a spider to an underwater base where there should be no bugs? How do they get in? She helps the spider out of the sink and asks it what it's doing here. I'm glad she's asking the right questions, but there is absolutely no sense of urgency there. I'm legitimately perplexed over a simple spider. After Nora gets dressed, she notices a leak in the facility. As some of you already know, being trapped in water is one of my biggest fears. This is a hard no for me. You can keep your secret underwater knowledge and species. I'll keep living up here, and I'll say that's a little bit more than a leak. The breach continues to damage the structural integrity of the base, and Nora runs through the halls trying to wake everyone up as she runs to safety. Eventually, Rodrigo joins her in her escape, and the two of them try to seal the bulkhead before the whole rig explodes from the pressure breach. Just as they get ready to seal it, 2 other men try to make it to them in time, but they don't make it in time. Nora seals the door just as the men reach it, but it's too late for them. Suddenly, an explosion knocks Nora and Rodrigo unconscious as the hull detaches from the base. When they come to, the system is warning them that the destruction of the rig is imminent. Nora tries to radio for help, but all she hears is the rumbling of something big outside. The 2 survivors start to make their way to the computer system to try and find out which escape pods are closest. Rodrigo finally asks the important question of whether she thinks that was an earthquake, and Nora definitely thinks it was something else. The 2 of them find a nearby pod, and they start to make their way to it. On their way, Nora hears someone trapped under the rubble, and they pull out Paul.
Sweet black-chested elven creature.
Well, they obviously have a comfortable friendship, or this is one of the most awkward thank you for rescuing me moments ever. To top it off, his first question is to ask if little Paul is okay, always worried about the essentials. As they continue on their journey to the escape pods, they squeeze through a collapsing tunnel, and Nora finds dead bodies of those that didn't survive the collapse. Eventually, they make it to the pod bay, but the captain has been locked inside. They also see that the evac pods are gone. After Nora wires the doors to open, the captain sends Nora to the control room, and she finds Emily and Smith are still there trying to make contact. Nora hops on one of the stations to try and see the status of the rig. She finds out that the cooling towers didn't survive the collapse, and the core of the rig is completely unstable. So, just to keep track of all the ways they can die, we have the rig crushing them, drowning, explosion, and electrocution with all those wires hanging around water. Positivity is key here though. There's still a 2% chance they all make it. Nice. They find out that they have about 30 minutes before the core explodes, and the captain decides that they're going to go outside to walk to another part of the station to try and get to a vehicle. This is not a good option, but Smith throws on the last transmission that was recorded. Low growling can be heard, and I'd say that this underwater spacewalk is their best option. Once they realize that there is no better option, they suit up and get ready for the impossible. It becomes clear that Emily has never been out there before. When they look around for usable helmets, it almost seems like Rodrigo gives Nora a damaged one on purpose. Alrighty then, go ahead and add sabotage to the list of ways to die here now. I really didn't think there was an ulterior motive for any of them, but what kind of story would it be if there wasn't a little drama within the group? Emily starts to break before they even get in the water, but when the floor above them becomes compromised, it becomes clear that it's now or never. The group gets on the elevator and descend into the dark water. Well, I'm sorry. I've been over here bad-mouthing Rodrigo like he's trying to get Nora killed, but it turns out that he was actually kind of being a hero by taking the damaged one instead. I can admit that I was wrong. Now, can someone admit that having suits that implode into balls of energy were a bad idea as well? The explosion leaves chunks of Rodrigo floating in the water around everyone, and if they weren't panicking before, they definitely are now. As Nora gets to clear water, she looks out into the infinite black. They jump down to the clearing platform and go inside the airlock to take it down to the sea floor. On their way down, the system alerts them to a signal getting picked up from below them. The captain thinks that it's a beacon from an escape pod that didn't make it, so Paul and Smith suit up to go check it out. Paul and Smith make their way closer to the beacon, but once they reach the location, they can't see anything. Suddenly, they see a pod that has imploded, and it's covered in something that resembles jellyfish. Just as they get ready to pull out the dead body, Nora tries to tell them that they should just come back, but Paul decides to get a closer look at what is all over the body's back. Alright, add creepy liquefied back eels to the list of ways to die. Yet another phrase I never thought I'd say. This is what it was. Back eels. I'm loving the fact that there are so many dangers with this movie. I kind of thought this was just one of those race to survival as the base collapses movies. This is a nice addition and totally believable. Have you seen the new species they found in the deep water lately? Emily inspects it and deduces that this is an ancient species that has survived in some sort of thermal vent down here. Suddenly, they lose power to the lift and they can hear something outside trying to get in. Paul comes up with the idea of the creature they brought in as being a baby of something bigger outside. He decides to close the door that leads to the decompression chamber, but when they notice that the base is exploding above them, they rush back into the chamber to make sure they disengage before hitting the bottom. They get out just in time and run along the ocean floor to get away from the collapsing base. Paul finds the entrance to the pipeline nearby and they run for the door. Smith gets hit by falling debris, but the others help him to the entrance. After they get pressure in the chamber, they talk about how they all saw that something bigger is out there with them.
It's gonna be fine, buddy.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. I don't think there would be enough positive confirmation in the world to convince me that everything was gonna be fine. Nope. I actually probably would have just chilled in the control room. Get it over with early. I feel like most of these guys are just prolonging the inevitable, but they're getting the crap scared out of them before it now. A car shows up that runs on the pipeline rail, and they plan to ride it up to the midpoint station. There's a change of plans when they realize how much water is in the pipe. Once they stop the car, they can hear that something is outside following them along the pipeline. They reach a point that is closed off too tight for most of them to comfortably fit in, so Nora goes ahead to check out if they can make it through it all. Eventually, she comes up on the other side, and she lets them know that they can do it. They start to come through one at a time, but Paul is left for last. The crew hear Paul yell on the radio, but when they pull him over by the cable, he starts to get pulled back by whatever is following them. Well, that would be traumatizing. It was such a sudden pop and his suit immediately filled with blood. It's like his actual body just got popped into a bloody pulp. Well, whatever it is was strong enough to rip him out of his own suit. I've gotta say, these suits would be perfect power armor for a Fallout movie. Just repaint them and start filming. When the survivors make it to the midpoint station, Emily brings up the idea that the ocean is trying to take back what they took from her, and the captain notices that the glass in the station is already cracking. They decide to take a look at Smith's oxygen scrubber that was damaged. Then they head back out while supporting Smith through the vast open water. Suddenly, they see a creature flash in front of them, but the limited visibility makes it hard for them to focus on it. They turn off their lights since they think that's what is attracting it, and the captain turns on his special sensory vision. What the hell is Slender Man doing underwater? They can't even call it a creature anymore. It almost looks human if you take away the ginormous size difference. Is this what they are trying to say came first in the evolution timeline? If that's true, we definitely backtracked. Go back! Smith gets dragged away by the creature, but when the captain goes to check on him, he sees that he is still alive. The captain pushes him to safety, but he goes back to get the gun that Smith dropped. Of course, the captain gets grabbed here, but since they are all connected by a cable, they all get pulled up to different sections. Nora finds herself on a floating platform, and she sees the captain hanging onto the platform edge. She goes to help him, but she's interrupted when she sees the creature stalking them. It's not human, definitely not human. It's got some sort of sea anemone sucking mouth, but Nora gives it what for. She straight up punches it in the face. She's got guts. The creature grabs the captain and takes off at breakneck speeds, but Nora grabs hold of his hand. The speed they travel puts the suit's integrity at risk, so the captain sacrifices himself to save Nora. When she comes to, she is completely alone and has no idea where she is. She eventually finds the entrance to the drill and she heads inside before her suit gives out on her too. Once inside, she takes a shower and mourns all of those that she has lost. She goes to the command center to radio Emily and Smith to see if they are still alive, but she gets no answer. She goes to investigate the rest of the facility and she finds equipment to help her handle the creatures so she can get to the next landmark, which is the vehicle to escape. On her journey, she ends up hearing Emily over the radio. Needless to say, Emily is freaking traumatized. Nora tries to call out to her, but Emily ends up running away from her. Nora has to literally tackle her to get her to come back to her senses. I can't really blame her though. I would absolutely lose it being on the ocean floor like that. Those creatures would have to be more scared of my paranoid butt. The two of them pull Smith's unconscious body behind them as they make their way to the escape vehicle, but Emily is running low on oxygen. Once they almost make it to the entrance to the drill, they notice that their way is blocked by a whole group of the creatures.
Oh my god.
Turn your lights off, lie down, and just give up. What are they though? I'm really curious to get a really clear look at them. I feel like every time we see them, it's a different form or something. Nora and Emily decide to try and creep through the horde, but Emily's oxygen level alarm goes off and wakes up some of the creatures. One of them drops down on Nora's helmet and she tells Emily to keep going with Smith. Emily takes off and some of the creatures wake up and start pummeling them. One of them even tries to swallow them whole, but Nora shoots the gun she took from the last station and crawls her way out through the creature's skin. This of course wakes up a whole bunch of the creatures, but what's even scarier is the fact that this thing woke up. It's Cthulhu! I'm only joking, but what if this was an attempt at a Cthulhu movie? I'm glad this is a story on its own. The giant creature reaches out with its giant claw and destroys part of the station with one fell swoop. When Nora comes to, Emily has gotten Nora and Smith to the airlock successfully. The three survivors strip out of their suits and rush to the nearest directory to find out where they might find a pod. When they look out through the command center window, they get a good glimpse of what they are running from. The creature starts to take out entire sections of the drill, and they end up making it to the escape pods just in time. There are only two good ones though. They strap Smith in first and he takes off. Nora tries to get Emily in the next pod, but Emily knows that there is something wrong with this last pod. It takes a little convincing on Nora's part to get Emily in the pod.
Nora, stop it! Emily, stop it!
I didn't say it was a pleasant method, but if it works, then who am I to argue with the results? The two of them say their goodbyes, and Emily jettisons up to the surface. Nora now sits down in the command center and waits for her fate to take her. Suddenly, she hears banging coming from outside, and she sees that the creatures are actually coming from the big one. They are swimming after the escape pods, but Nora takes matters into her own hands to stop them. She accesses the core terminal and makes it completely unstable. As the core heats up, the creature senses that there is danger and tries to escape, but it is too late. The explosion destroys the creature and most of the small ones around it. It also destroys Nora, who has accepted that this is her fate. Then the credits roll as we see how the company tries to cover up what happened. After all that, the company decides to go back to drilling. Well, I'd say that's the most realistic part of the entire movie. I know a lot of you probably weren't putting too much stock into this movie, but it's definitely worth a shot. Kristen Stewart puts on one hell of a performance with a character that actually matches her aura better than most of her other roles. It also touches on an underwater plot that is completely possible to some extent, and that alone should be enough to make anyone feel unsettled while watching. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.